The rain fell over the metal roofs of the slave market, each drop echoing like a whisper of pain. The air smelled of rust, oil, and fear. Banners of different alien clans waved in the smoky wind, and the sound of chains filled the air. Cages lined both sides of the street, each holding beings from 100 worlds. Some were strong, some broken, some crying quietly. The auctioneer shouted loudly, his voice harsh like metal scraping against stone. "Next one, strong worker from the mines of Tarath," he yelled. Buyers moved closer, eyes glowing. Hands ready with digital credits. One by one, the slaves were sold, until the cages grew empty, until only one figure remained. She sat at the far end of the market, chained to a rusted post. Her skin was pale blue, covered in dirt and oil stains. Her dress, once bright orange, was now torn and burned. Both her arms were metal, old cybernetic limbs that clicked and hummed weakly with every movement. She looked more machine than alive. The auctioneer scowled. "No one wants this one," he said. "Faulty parts, damaged brain, useless." The crowd laughed, a cruel sound that mixed with the thunder. But then the laughter stopped. Heavy boots walked through the muddy street. A man stepped out from the shadows. His coat was black, long, and torn from travel. A scar crossed his cheek, and his eyes were like cold fire, human eyes. The alien guards shifted uneasily. Humans were rare in these parts, feared for their strength and their strange ways. The man stopped in front of the chained girl. His gaze steady, saying nothing. The auctioneer smirked. "Human. This one's not worth your credits," he said. "She's broken." The man didn't answer. He looked at the girl again. She didn't lift her head. She had stopped hoping long ago, stopped caring if anyone looked at her. Then the man spoke, his voice quiet but sharp. "How much?" The auctioneer blinked. "You can't be serious," I said. The man repeated. "How much?" The market fell silent. The alien buyers leaned closer. Curious, the auctioneer sighed. 50 credits. Scrap value. The human threw a small metal chip onto the table. It glowed, showing payment approved. "Double it," he said. The crowd gasped. The auctioneer stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or bow. "Double? For her?" The man didn't answer. He walked forward, cut the chains with a plasma blade, and lifted the girl gently. Her body trembled. But he didn't seem to notice as he turned to leave. One of the guards stepped forward. "Human!" the alien hissed. "Why waste your money on trash?" The human stopped. His eyes turned cold as space. "Because I don't see trash," he said, and walked away. The girl tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Why? Why did you—" He looked down at her, rain dripping from his hair. "You'll understand later," he said. They reached his ship, an old freighter with scars of 100 battles. He laid her down on a bunk, covered her with a thermal blanket, and sat quietly, watching the storm outside the viewport. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the sound of engines hummed like a heartbeat. The girl finally whispered, "You bought me. I freed you," he replied. "There's a difference." She turned her head, eyes hollow. "You wasted your credits." He looked at her mechanical arms. "Maybe," he said softly, "but I don't buy things for value. I buy for reason." She didn't understand. Not yet. When he stood to leave, she asked weakly, "What do I call you?" He paused at the door. "Rylan," she nodded slowly. "Lyra," she said, giving her own name for the first time in years. Rylan nodded once and left her to rest. Outside, thunder rolled again. The slave market behind them burned, the result of a small bomb he had planted before leaving. He didn't tell her, but he knew. Some things deserved to be erased. As his ship lifted through the clouds, the stormlight reflected on Lyra's blue skin. For the first time, she looked out the window and saw the stars. They seemed distant, cold but free, and deep in her heart. Something began to stir again, a memory of what it meant to be alive. Rylan watched her from the cockpit. His reflection ghosted on the glass. "You're not worthless," he whispered to himself, not sure if she could hear. The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the market of chains far behind. But in the vast darkness ahead, two broken souls began a journey that would shake the galaxy, because sometimes the smallest act of mercy, buying what others called worthless, becomes the spark that lights an entire universe. The Iron Promise floated through space like an old ghost, its metal hull scarred from battles long forgotten. Inside the ship, silence ruled, broken only by the soft hum of engines. The human captain, Rylan, moved quietly between panels, checking systems. His face calm but tired. In the medbay, the blue-skinned girl lay under dim lights. Her name was Lyra, the last unsold slave of the market. Her body was weak, and her cybernetic arms sparked faintly. She opened her eyes and saw the ceiling above her. Smooth. Clean, not like the filthy cages she once knew. When Rylan entered, she tried to sit up, but her body trembled. He placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "Rest," he said. "You're safe here." Her voice came out rough. "Safe? Why?" she asked. "You don't even know me." He looked at her, eyes cold but kind beneath the surface. "I don't need to," he replied. "I just don't like seeing people thrown away." She didn't answer. She had seen too much cruelty to believe in kindness. Rylan turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Why buy me?" she whispered. "I'm broken." He paused, looking back at her. "Everything can be repaired," he said quietly. "Even people." He walked out, leaving her to think about his words. Days passed slowly. Lyra spent most of her time sitting near the ship's window, staring at the stars. Her arms still twitched, one servo dead, one finger unresponsive. She didn't ask for help. She didn't want pity. But Rylan watched from afar. He saw her stubbornness, her silence, and the way she still tried to fix things despite her pain. One day, while repairing a damaged drone, he dropped a small toolbox beside her. "You said you used to be a mechanic," he said. "Prove it." She looked at the box, then at him, unsure if he was mocking her. But his tone was calm, serious. She reached for the tools, her metallic hand shaking slightly. Hours passed as she worked in silence, her movements clumsy at first, but soon grew precise. Rylan stood beside her, watching her repair the small drone, connecting wires and recalibrating circuits. Finally, with a soft buzz, the drone's eyes flickered to life. It hovered slowly, its light glowing blue. Lyra stared at it, disbelief in her eyes. "It works," she whispered. Rylan smiled faintly. "Told you." She felt something inside her she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Later, during dinner, she asked him, "Why are you helping me?" Rylan sat across from her, slicing dried ration cubes. "Because someone once helped me," he said. "When I didn't deserve it," she frowned. "So you think I don't deserve it either?" He looked up, his gaze sharp. "No," he said. "I think you've been told that lie too many times." She didn't know how to reply, so she just ate quietly, thinking about his words. At night, the ship drifted near the edge of a nebula. The stars painted the cockpit in soft light. Lyra came in quietly, watching him pilot. "Where are we going?" she asked. Rylan tapped the control screen, out of slave space. "Toward free systems." Her eyes widened slightly. "You mean?" "I'll be free. You already are," he said without looking at her. "The only chains left are in your head." She looked down at her hands, at the scars where her real skin met metal. She wasn't sure if freedom was something she could ever truly feel. The next day, alarms blared across the ship. Rylan rushed to the console, scanning the radar. "Damn," he muttered. "Patrol ship." "They're tracking us." Lyra's eyes widened. "Slavers," he nodded. "Looks like they're sweeping this sector." She felt fear twist her chest. "If they catch me, they won't," he said firmly, grabbing his blaster and heading for the lower deck. But before he could seal the engine bay, Lyra ran after him. "I can help," she said. "No," he barked. "You're injured." "I'm not useless," she snapped. "Not anymore." Rylan looked at her, seeing something fierce behind those tired eyes. He hesitated, then nodded once. "Fine. Keep the power core stable if we lose it." "We're dead." She ran to the control panels, sparks bursting around her. Her metal fingers moved fast. Rerouting power, adjusting flow. The slaver ship fired, shaking the freighter violently. "Shields at 40%, Rylan shouted. Lyra gritted her teeth. "Rerouting auxiliary power," she said, sparks flying as she forced energy through overloaded circuits. Her skin burned, her arms glowed, but she didn't stop. The ship surged forward faster than before, tearing through the enemy's targeting lock. One more blast from Rylan's cannon hit the patrol ship squarely. It exploded in light and silence. When the shaking stopped, Lyra collapsed beside the console. Smoke rising from her arms, Rylan rushed to her, catching her before she fell. Her eyes flickered open, faint but alive. "Told you," she whispered weakly. "Not useless." He smiled, his voice soft. "No, you're not." He carried her back to the med bay. Heart heavy but proud, hours later she woke again. her body wrapped in cooling gel. The pain was still there, but so was something else, hope. Rylan sat beside her, eyes tired but calm. She looked at him and said quietly, "Why did you save me again?" He leaned back in his chair, looking at the stars outside the viewport. "Because," he said slowly, "you were never worthless." Tears welled in her eyes. She turned away, hiding her face. Her voice trembled. "No one ever said that to me before." "Then remember it," Rylan said, "because I mean it." The engines hummed softly again, steady and strong. The Iron Promise drifted onward into the dark, carrying two lives, one who had lost everything, and one who had chosen to give something back. And as Lyra closed her eyes, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I can start again." The storm in space came without warning. Thick clouds of plasma energy rolled like fire across the void. Lightning crackled between asteroids, painting the darkness in blue and gold. The Iron Promise drifted on the edge of it, small compared to the storm, but still fighting to stay alive. Rylan sat in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the sensors. His hands moved fast across the controls. The radar blinked red. Incoming ships. He leaned forward, muttering under his breath. "Not again." Lyra stood behind him, her metallic arms repaired but still weak. "Who is it?" she asked. He zoomed the display. His jaw tightened. "Slaver Patrol, 3 ships." Her breath caught. "They found us." "Yeah," Rylan said, his voice low. "And they're not here to talk." The patrol ships spread out like wolves circling prey. Their engines glowed in the storm, bright and menacing. Rylan switched on the defense grid. "Hold steady," he said. "We can outrun 1, maybe 2. Not 3. Lyra grabbed the co-pilot seat, her fingers tapping fast over the power board. "Engine's overheating," she said. "We can't boost without risking a meltdown." "Then we don't boost," he replied calmly. "We fight!" The storm roared around them. Bolts of plasma lightning hit the hull, shaking the ship. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly as she focused. "Rerouting energy lines. Weapons are charged," she said. "But shields are unstable." Rylan grinned slightly. "Then we make it quick." The first enemy ship fired. A blast of red energy hit their shields. Sparks flew across the cockpit. Lyra screamed as the power surged through her interface, pain flashing through her cybernetic limbs. "Lyra," Rylan shouted, "stay back." She shook her head. "No, I can handle it," she said, pushing through the pain, her voice trembling. "If I stop, we die." She rerouted the energy flow again, redirecting power from the lights to the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, spinning through the storm. Rylan used the chaos to fire 2 plasma torpedoes. They hit the nearest slaver ship, tearing it apart in a burst of flame. "One down," Rylan muttered. Lyra managed a weak smile. 2 left. The storm intensified, thunder rolling through space like drums. Lightning burst across the hull, shaking the Iron Promise violently. The second slaver ship closed in fast. Firing chains of magnetic grapples, they latched onto the hull, dragging the freighter toward its docking claws. Rylan cursed. "They're trying to board us." Lyra looked at the power core screen. Her eyes widened. "The containment grid is failing." He glanced at her. "What can you do?" Her voice trembled. "I can stabilize it manually." But what? "It'll burn through my arms," she said quietly. Rylan's eyes hardened. "No, we'll find another way." She shook her head. There is no other way. Before he could stop her, she ran toward the lower deck. The engine bay roared with energy. Blue light pulsing from the ship's heart, Lyra climbed onto the control platform, her metal hands gripping the cables. Sparks danced around her. She screamed as she forced the power grid to align. Her arms glowed red-hot, smoke rising from her joints. "Come on," she whispered through gritted teeth. "Stay together." Up in the cockpit, Rylan saw the readings stabilize. The engine power spiked, full thrust online. "Lyra, you did it," he shouted into the comms. "Now get back." But there was no reply. He turned the ship sharply, spinning it through the magnetic chains. The engines roared. Breaking free of the slaver's grasp, he fired again, blasting the second ship apart in a shower of debris. Only one remained, larger and heavily armed. Its captain's voice echoed through the comms. "Surrender the slave human or be destroyed." Rylan's voice was cold. "She's not a slave." He pushed the engines to their limit, diving straight toward the last enemy ship. The storm raged around them, lightning flashing like fire. He fired every weapon he had, explosions ripping through the enemy's hull. The slaver captain screamed, You'll die with her. Ryland smiled grimly. Not today. The enemy ship exploded. A massive burst of light swallowed by the storm. The iron promise shook violently. Alarms blaring, smoke filled the cockpit. Ryland jumped from his seat and ran to the lower deck. He found Lyra on the floor, her body burned, her cybernetic arms glowing faintly. She was alive, but barely. He knelt beside her, lifting her head gently. "You're insane," he said softly, his voice breaking. "But brave." Her lips curved weakly. "Told you." "I'm not useless," she whispered. He laughed quietly, even as tears filled his eyes. "No, you're not." He carried her back to the med bay. Every step heavy, the storm outside began to fade, leaving only quiet darkness. Hours passed as he worked, using every bit of knowledge he had to repair her. His hands trembled, wires sparking, circuits humming. Finally, her breathing steadied. Her eyes opened slowly, faint blue light shining within them. "You stayed," she said weakly. "Of course," he replied. "I don't leave people behind," she smiled faintly. "You should have. Not my style," he said. The storm outside faded into silence, stars slowly returning to view. The ship drifted peacefully now, floating among the remnants of the battle. Ryland sat beside her bed, exhausted, watching her sleep. He whispered to himself, "You're not broken, Lyra. You're the strongest thing I've ever seen." And as the iron promise glided through the aftermath of the storm, both human and machine began to understand that their survival was no accident. It was destiny written in the fire and thunder of a dying sky, because sometimes the galaxy doesn't need heroes. It needs those who refuse to give up. Even when everything around them burns, the iron promise floated quietly through the endless dark. The storm was gone, but the damage it left behind ran deep. Smoke still rose from the lower decks, wires sparked, and metal groaned like a wounded beast. Ryland sat alone in the med bay, his hands covered in grease and blood. Staring at Lyra's still form, she lay motionless on the table, half her body wrapped in bandages, her cybernetic arms dim. For hours he had worked to keep her alive, patching circuits, stabilizing vitals, and whispering words she couldn't hear. He leaned forward, exhausted, whispering softly, "You don't get to die." Not yet. Outside the viewport, the stars drifted by in silence. Ryland wiped his face and stood, walking to the console. He checked the sensors. The ship was in a quiet sector now. No patrols, no threats, just the hum of broken engines trying to breathe. He looked at the reflection of himself in the screen. Tired eyes staring back, a face lined with guilt and weariness. "What are you doing, Ryland?" he muttered. "Saving a slave girl when the whole galaxy's burning." But something inside him already knew the answer. Hours later, the medbay lights flickered. Lyra's mechanical fingers twitched. Her voice came weak and slow. "Ryland," he turned instantly, moving to her side. "Easy," he said. "You're safe." Her eyes blinked open slowly, glowing faintly blue. "Did we make it?" He smiled, relief in his voice. "Barely." She looked down at her arms. Blackened from the overload, the metal melted and cracked. "I can't feel them," she whispered. "They'll need time," he said quietly. "I'll fix them." She turned her head toward him, confusion mixing with sorrow. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you keep saving me?" Ryland hesitated, looking at her burned skin, the faint rise and fall of her breathing. "Because you remind me of someone," he said softly. "Someone I couldn't save." Lyra's eyes softened. "Who?" He looked away, staring at the stars. "My sister," he said finally. "She died in the Terran Wars. Enslaved by the same kind of people who chained you." Silence filled the room, the kind that carried pain too deep for words. "I couldn't reach her," he said, his voice cracking. "But I can save you." Lyra's lips trembled. "Then I'm just—" "Your second chance." Ryland looked at her sharply. "No," he said. "You're my reason to try again." Days passed slowly. The ship floated quietly, healing itself piece by piece. Ryland and Lyra spent their time in silence, working on repairs. The more they talked, the more something human grew between them. Not love yet, but understanding. One night, while they worked in the cargo bay, Lyra asked, "Why didn't you sell me when you could have?" Ryland stopped what he was doing. "Because I don't sell people," he said simply. She laughed softly, her voice fragile but real. "Not even the broken ones," he smirked. "Especially the broken ones." For the first time, she smiled without fear, but peace never lasted long in that galaxy. 3 days later, sensors flared again, warning lights flashing red. Ryland rushed to the cockpit. Scanning the radar. No, he muttered. Not them again. A massive signal appeared. Not slavers this time, but a warship, Terran markings faint but real. It was human, yet foreign. Lyra followed him. What is it? She asked. Terran warship, he said slowly, but the signal's wrong. It's not military, it's rogue, the comms crackled. And a deep voice came through. Captain Rylan of the Iron Promise. You are harboring illegal property, surrender the girl. Rylan froze. Property, he repeated coldly. Lyra's face went pale. They mean me, he turned to her. You're not property. Not to anyone, the voice continued. Hand her over and we'll let you live. Rylan clenched his jaw. No deal. The comms went silent, then a blinding light filled the viewport. The rogue Terran ship had locked weapons. Rylan, Lyra said, fear in her voice. You can't fight them. I can try, he replied. You'll die, she said. For me, he looked at her, his eyes steady. If that's what it takes, she grabbed his arm. Her voice breaking. Don't, please, I'm not worth it. He turned sharply. His voice fierce. Stop saying that, you're not worthless. You never were. Tears filled her eyes. You don't even know me. I don't need to, he said softly. I just know what I see. The enemy ship fired. The Iron Promise shook violently. Alarms blaring, Rylan jumped into the pilot seat. Maneuvering hard. They're faster, he muttered. But they're not smarter. Lyra ran to the engineering bay despite her pain. Rylan, if I reroute the reactor core again. I can give you 5 seconds of full thrust, he yelled back. You'll kill yourself. She smiled faintly. Maybe. But I'm tired of running. Before he could stop her, she disappeared into the lower deck. Sparks flew as she tore open the control conduits, electricity dancing across her body. She screamed in pain, but her voice turned to laughter. I can do this. Rylan saw the ship's power surge, engines roaring. He pulled the lever. The Iron Promise dived under the enemy's fire and blasted forward. Firing every weapon at once, the rogue ship's hull cracked, exploding into a million shards of fire. The battle was over, but at a cost. Rylan ran to the lower deck. The air smelled of burning metal. He found her lying on the floor again. Motionless, he dropped beside her, lifting her carefully. Lyra, stay with me, he whispered. Don't you dare. Her eyes flickered open faintly. Did we win? He nodded, voice shaking. Yeah. We did, she smiled weakly. Then, I'm glad. Her hand brushed against his chest, faint and trembling. You gave me something. What? He asked softly. She whispered, a reason. Her eyes closed again. Her breathing shallow, Rylan held her tight, whispering over and over. Don't go. The engines hummed faintly again. The stars outside glowed softly through the cracked hull. He looked down at her, tears falling silently. You saved me too, he whispered. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by wreckage and stars, the man who once thought he'd lost everything realized that sometimes saving one soul, even a broken one, was enough to change the whole galaxy. Because in choosing her, he had chosen humanity again. Silence filled the Iron Promise. The battle was over. But the ship floated like a wounded ghost. Drifting through the stars, smoke curled along the corridors, and the faint hum of broken systems echoed like a heartbeat fading in the dark. Rylan sat beside Lyra in the medbay, his hand gripping hers tightly. Her breathing was weak, her skin pale blue and cold to the touch. Her cybernetic arms flickered softly with fading light. Come on, he whispered. You're stronger than this. He had lost too many already. Too many faces turned to dust and memories. He refused to lose her too. Outside the cracked viewport, the stars looked distant, calm, uncaring, but inside, the small ship carried a storm of emotion. Lyra's eyes fluttered weakly, her voice barely a whisper. Did we survive? Rylan smiled faintly. Barely. She tried to sit up, but her arms failed. You should have left me, she said, her tone trembling. You could have escaped without me. He shook his head. I don't leave people behind, he said softly. Not ever. Tears welled in her eyes. Why do you care so much? He smiled sadly. Because no one else will. Over the next few days, Rylan repaired the ship piece by piece. Each spark, each sound of welding, echoed through the silent corridors. Lyra helped where she could, guiding him with her half-working systems. Even broken, she refused to be useless. She taught herself to link her remaining circuits to the ship's systems, merging her consciousness with the old freighter. One night, as Rylan sat in the cockpit, Staring at the stars, a soft voice echoed from the console. "You're awake again," he said, recognizing her tone through the ship's speakers. "I'm always awake now," Lyra replied, her voice calm, almost peaceful. "The ship listens to me." He turned slightly, smiling. "Then it's in good hands." Her voice softened.
"Rylan, do you ever wonder why you saved me?" He paused.
"Every day. And do you regret it?" He looked out at the stars. His expression steady. Not for a second. Weeks passed, and news began to spread through the outer systems. Smugglers, traders, and drifters whispered about a strange human ship that fought slavers and freed the chained. A human captain with a broken blue-skinned woman who burned brighter than any star. They said the Iron Promise appeared in slave worlds and vanished before the enemy could react. Chains melted, cages burst open, and entire camps disappeared. Some said the girl was a ghost. Others said she was a machine. But every rumor carried the same ending. She saves them. Lyra had become more than a survivor. She had become a symbol. Rylan didn't care about fame. He just cared about seeing another freed life each day. But even he couldn't ignore the whispers spreading across the stars. "People are talking about you," he told her one night, smiling faintly. "About us," she corrected. "They say a human and a broken girl are saving the forgotten," he chuckled softly. "Then they're half right. One day, while patrolling a forgotten mining sector, they received a distress call. The voice on the channel was young, trembling. "Please help us. They're taking everyone." Rylan's eyes hardened. "Set course," Lyra responded instantly. Coordinates locked when they arrived. They saw a massive slaver station orbiting a red moon. Thousands of signals blinked inside, prisoners, chained and silent. Rylan whispered. "That's a city." Lyra's tone changed, calm but fierce. "Then we'll free it." The ship charged forward, engines roaring like thunder, weapons flared, cutting through defense drones. Rylan piloted with focus, dodging beams and missiles. Lyra synced with the station's systems, hacking through layers of alien code. Sparks flew from her ports, her mechanical eyes glowing white. "Almost there," she said. "Just one more lock." "Lyra," Rylan shouted over the alarms. "You're burning your systems again." "I can handle it," she said, her voice strong. "I was built for this." The main gate exploded, the prison walls shattering. Thousands of slaves looked up as ships began to open. Rylan's voice boomed over the speakers. "You're free, all of you." For a moment, the galaxy stood still after the battle. As the freed refugees boarded escape vessels, one small alien girl ran up to Lyra. She looked no older than 10. Her eyes wide, her hands trembling. "Are you the broken girl?" the child asked softly. "The one who saves people." Lyra smiled gently. Kneeling down, "I was broken once," she said. "But I learned something." "What?" the child asked. Lyra reached out, touching the child's shoulder. "Broken doesn't mean worthless," the girl smiled, eyes full of light, and ran to join the others. Rylan stood beside her, arms crossed. "You're turning into a legend," he said quietly. She looked at him with a small grin. "No, we are. Later." As the stars stretched across the void, the Iron Promise drifted quietly once more, its hull scarred but its purpose shining bright. Lyra stood beside Rylan in the cockpit, her eyes reflecting the galaxy's light. "Do you think the galaxy will ever change?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Maybe not," he said. "But people will, one by one." She nodded slowly. "Then we'll keep going." "Until when?" "Until no one calls anyone worthless again," she said softly. Rylan looked at her, proud and quiet. "Deal!" The engines flared, pushing the ship into the horizon. The stars ahead seemed brighter now, as if the universe itself watched them with respect. And somewhere between the silence and the stars, the legend of the broken girl and the human who believed in her began to spread, whispered in every shadow, sung in every world that once knew chains. Because sometimes hope doesn't come from the perfect. It comes from those who were once broken, yet chose to rise anyway, and together, they became the story the galaxy would never forget.